We'll get started. We got a full agenda today and not as much time to do it. My floor leader has got to get ready for the Breeders' Cup, and I've got to go shell corn. Commissioner, you know how that is.
Better you than me.
Yeah. So if the secretary would call the roll.
Senator Carpenter, Senator Caslin, Senator Givens, Senator Howell, Senator Parrott, Senator Thayer,
Here.
Senator Webb, Senator West, Senator Westerfield, Senator Wise, Representative Callaway,
Present.
Representative Dixon, Representative Dossett,
Present.
Representative Pfister,
Here.
Representative Flood, Representative Graham, Representative Hart,
Here.
Representative Herron, Representative Imes, Representative King,
Present.
Representative Cook,
Here.
Representative Kulkarni, Representative McPherson, Representative Pollock,
Here.
Representative Pratt,
Here.
Representative Rayburn,
Here.
Representative Raymond, Representative Reed,
Here.
Representative Stevenson, Representative Tate, Representative Thomas,
Present.
Representative Tipton,
Here.
Co-Chair Hornback,
Here.
and Co-Chair Heath.
Here.
Got a quorum. So thank everybody for being here today. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes? Okay, we haven't got a quorum yet. So we'll do the minutes a little bit later. Anyway, thank everybody for being here today. I know we've got several presentations. Looking forward to a good upcoming session, this next session, and like to be briefed on what some of the issues are that are out there in agriculture. I would like to remind everybody that we do have a full agenda to keep your presentations short. If I get to think they start running too long, I'll cut you off. So just be aware of that. We do have a quorum now. Do I have a motion on the minutes from October meeting? So moved to second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Minutes from the last meeting pass. So in order to move along, I know Kentucky Farm Bureau has got a busy schedule today. They're doing resolutions where they get all their folks from the county levels to come in and set policy for the next year. So Sharon and Drew, I think you all are here if you would like to come forward. If you would introduce yourselves for the record, you may proceed. Turn your speaker on.
Is that better?
Yes.
I'm Drew Graham, Executive Vice President, Kentucky Farm Bureau, and we just first like to say we appreciate the opportunity to come to you today. A little early, I might say, as we're in the middle of resolutions, and of course how we handle that is we've got about 900 resolutions, a little over that, I guess, that have been sent in to our resolutions committee, which is made up of a grassroots organization, 2 from each district, that will determine what is sent on to the annual meeting for the total delegation, of course, to look at and to determine our policy as we go forward. And Sharon, she's going to give you a little more on the policy and on the direction that we think we'll be going and probably are. But we just appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It's always good to come from the Ag Committee. We appreciate what you do, not only for agriculture, but for rural Kentucky. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sharon.
Sure. Thank you, Drew. I'm Sharon Furchess. I live down in Murray. I'm a farmer there in Callaway and Graves County. Also serve on the state board of Kentucky Farm Bureau and serve as their second vice president. I'm in my 4th year of service on the executive team and appreciate you all very much. We enjoy coming to this group, a good group of friendly faces, and know you understand. Senator Hornback said he had corn to still shell. I wish we were still doing that. We have finished for the first time in a long time in October, but down in my end of the state, we had a pretty good drought, so we finished early, but we're storing it and see what happens here. So appreciate you all and everything that you do for all of us across the state. As Drew said, we know we're in a friendly crowd and friendly faces as far as rural communities go and with agriculture, and Kentucky Farm Bureau knows that as well and appreciates all of your all service and what you do. We would like to thank you for your historic investment in the broadband issues and talking about the underserved and unserved areas across the state. And we certainly, that is something that we hear from our members constantly. Frankly, just before the pandemic started, we had organized a meeting of some of the main stakeholders in that conversation here in Frankfort, in this building, actually, in early March. And I guess it was one of the last things that we were able to have a public meeting at that time and talked about some ways to move forward. None of us could have expected the pandemic to happen as it did, and certainly it emphasized the fact that we all had to be better at reaching out and getting that information. And I think we're all tired of Zoom meetings, but yet they certainly have a place and always will, I assume, for the all of us at some point. But we appreciate what that you all did for that, not just for agriculture. It's so important to us too, but in our rural communities, and I know you appreciate that. Drew mentioned that our resolutions committee is meeting. I know a lot of you have seen these books before. They are going through this thing line by line. We'll also do that with the American Farm Bureau policy book and talk about the resolutions that have come from our county farm bureaus. You all know, I'm sure, that we are a grassroots organization, and we're so proud of that, 103 years strong now, and that is our process. It will culminate for this year in a little bit less than a month when we come together in Louisville for our annual meeting, and the membership will review those policies and resolutions, and they will become policy. Our policy is not made in the office in Louisville. It's not made by the board of directors, and certainly not by the executive team, but by the membership that we have out all across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So we're very proud of that fact, but this book will be organized after the convention ends on December 3rd, and as we move forward, this will be our playbook. This will be what we go by and what we talk to you guys about for our priorities moving forward. So we know that you know a lot of our issues and what's important to our membership because you're living out there with them as well. Solar is still a big issue. Our members are telling us, especially on the topic moving around the decommissioning and just making sure in our world that land, if it's ever not used in a solar project, that it could go back to agriculture. And the oversight that we need with those projects to assure that can still happen. Another issue that we're hearing so much about right now is workforce development. Labor on the farm, it's difficult right now. I don't think any of us have been in a retail facility or restaurant or anywhere lately, and certainly it's happening at the farm as well, that has a full staff ready to work and serve. It is so difficult right now, and we have issues around labor, certainly around migrant labor as well, but just getting enough help and enough well-trained help. We have a lot of folks talking about the workforce development issue as it pertains to trade schools and technical schools, and that is something that our members are really telling us that we all, as our children grow up, I'm a grandmother of 4, about to be 5 here pretty quickly. So it's hitting that next generation for me now. But we want them to all have an opportunity at college or whatever post-secondary school that they want to attend. And we would certainly hope that funds are available and made scholarships and those types of things, and our KEYS money to be able to support whatever choice that students make in the Commonwealth. And the most important thing is that we are able to welcome them back to rural communities. None of us want our kids to completely grow up and just leave us and certainly move out of state, but we want them to have opportunities to come back and be a viable part of our local community, certainly. And it's very important to our membership. We're hearing that all the time. I would like to take just a moment to invite you all to our annual meeting. I know that many of you attend on a regular basis. It starts November 30th in Louisville, downtown at the Galt House, and will run through December 3rd. You all know a lot of our process. We have board meetings before and after. We kind of kick things off with a group of commodity-specific conferences and kind of special interest conferences, I guess, and then we open up with a big commodity luncheon, and I know a number of you have been there in the past. So we certainly would always welcome you to join us at any time with that. So we would be certainly open to any questions that you all might have, and again, appreciate Representative Heath and Senator Hornback the invitation to be with you today.
Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate the update from us. Are there any questions? Representative Tipton.
Sharon, Drew, thank you all for being here. My Farm Bureau roots run deep. I was just trying to remember. I believe I've been on the county board of directors for 40 years. I have served as a past county president. I've been to many conventions. I had the opportunity to be on the Farm Bureau Young Farmer Committee. There are some other faces in this room. Keith Rogers back there, Chief of Staff, Department of Agriculture, was chairman of that committee. I was vice chairman. Senator Hornback served on that committee as the past chairman. So as vice chairman, I got to serve on the resolutions committee that year. And later I was elected to serve on the resolutions committee, and that's really where I first got, I think, my flavor, my interest in issues and topics. Farm Bureau's got a great leadership program called the LEAD program. Sharon and I were on the first LEAD program that Farm Bureau ever had back in 1989. So y'all are doing great work in advocating for the farmers in rural Kentucky, but also in developing leaders for the future. And I just want to thank you for all you do for the Commonwealth and for our people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We actually have that LEAD group in the office right now, and I shared with Representative Tipton earlier that we were able to speak with them, and I reminded them of being in the very first class. There were just 9 of us, but that group is still going strong, and it's so interesting. A lot are sitting in the boardroom today and active in various ways across Kentucky Farm Bureau and other organizations and groups just like this in the legislature in Kentucky. We also have a new program with Kentucky Farm Bureau, and Senator, I know you're proud of it as well, and proud of your daughter. It's called Generation Bridge, and we were targeting and keep them interested in a group that hits that age after the young farmer group, age 36 to 49. And Senator Hornback's daughter, Amanda Geisick, was our very first chair of that last year. Tammy White is our chair this year. And so it's a great group that is coming together to keep the issues in front of our rural communities. And one of our key focus areas is on advocacy. So we're very proud of that group and that we continue to train up good leaders.
You know, Sharon and Drew, the one thing, and of course I've been involved in Farm Bureau all my life, and the one thing different about Farm Bureau from all the other organizations is just exactly what you said. It's a grassroots organization, and you are developing policy from the grassroots up, and that's very appreciated. I always like that about Farm Bureau, and you all do a great job of representing agriculture, rural Kentucky, and everything that you do. So thank you all for what you do and the services you provide.
You've had the opportunity to chair this committee. I remember back about 25 years ago, I had an opportunity to do that. And I know that it's as you leave, there'll be a void there that you filled for a long time. And we appreciate that, appreciate the open door policy that all of you have for Kentucky Farm Bureau as we come down here, whether it's during the time that we have the drive-in or whether it's times that we just need to talk to you about issues. Senator Parrott, appreciate the service that you give this for so long for agriculture and for the leadership that you've shown. So with that, I just wanted to, before we left here today, tell you how much we appreciate the leadership. Look forward to who takes your position, seeing who that is, and having the same kind of relationship with them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'd also add Mark Haney and Eddie sends their best. They would have loved to have been here today, but there's about 50 people there at the office, probably expected them to be there.
I'd say that's where they should be.
There, that's right.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Our next presenter today is going to be the Department of Agriculture Commissioner. If you'd like to bring your folks up, and always a pleasure to have you here. And if you all would introduce yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
Ryan Quarles, Commissioner.
Dr. Katie Flynn, State Veterinarian.
Keith Rogers, Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Good morning. I know that many of you all will be attending the Breeders' Cup this weekend. It's a major international agriculture event. Kentucky's lucky to host it, but it's not the only international livestock event going on right now. We have the North American International Livestock Exposition going on as well. You don't have to dress up, and I guarantee you it's a lot cheaper to attend. And it's in Louisville, Kentucky, and Dr. Flynn just pulled an all-nighter. She came straight from there after checking animals in throughout the evening, so thank you for doing that. We had a wonderful state fair. I think that's the last time we were all together. Thank you for visiting. We had over 500,000 people enter the fairgrounds. Exhibits were up. We had a strong county fair season across Kentucky, and so thank you for you all for taking time to check that out as well. Another couple things real quick before we get into our presentation is we sent a team down to Auburn University. As you all know, you all generously fund 38 slots at Auburn Vet School, additional 3 slots at Tuskegee Vet School as well. Those are strategic investments, and so we want to make sure that we have a strong relationship with the Kentuckians that we send down and try to encourage as many of them as possible to come back as well. We also have a task force going on that will be meeting later this month that relates to the large animal veterinarian shortage across Kentucky. This is not just a Kentucky issue. We're seeing this across the United States. What steps can we do and what potential legislation we may need to bring for you all to help entice more people to work in large animal vets practices, not just in rural Kentucky, but underserved areas of the state as well. And the last thing I've got is that we continue to deal with the drought issues across Kentucky. I know that people are finishing up harvest, or there wasn't a harvest to have in some parts of the state, and we are concerned about potential forage shortages over the winter. You're seeing a lot of cattle being sold off right now because people just don't want to have to deal with finding hay throughout the winter and spring months as well. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Let's get into today's topic. I've got 1 year left as Commissioner of Agriculture. This has been an honor of a lifetime. And one thing that we want to do is make sure we leave the office in as good a shape as possible for whoever is next in this position. And we are very appreciative of the salary adjustments that this body bestowed upon our employees. It has helped with our retention and rehiring. But in one area of the KDA, we might need just a little bit extra help, and you're going to hear about that in a few moments. The Office of State Vet is very important. We oversee and have a jurisdiction over every animal disease in Kentucky. We're the Department of Agriculture, we're not the Department of Pets, okay? So this is livestock issues. But a lot of things occur underneath the leadership of Dr. Flynn that most Kentuckians may not be aware of. And most of our victories are ones you'll never read about in the newspaper. It's where we were able to prevent diseases from entering Kentucky. Our staff is active at racetracks, we're active at livestock shows, but we're also active working with our friends in UK and KSU Extension when a disease pops up that we may not know the origin of. But what happens is that whenever we have a disaster, her team and her staff, which are highly dedicated, are pulled away from just about everything else that's going on in the office. We're just one disaster away from being shorthanded in her office as well. And so we're going to provide a recommendation to you here in a few moments that we'd like for you all to consider during my last year in office. In the past year alone, it has highlighted some fractures in the system. We've had 5 disasters in agriculture in less than 12 months. Rewind the clock. This time last year, deer season opened up, and we had a positive CWD case just miles south of Murray, Kentucky. And so Dr. Flynn and her staff had to do surveillance down in West Kentucky, pulling our staff off our duties. Then we had tornadoes just a month later, where we had to deal with animal welfare issues all across a 200-mile path of destruction across Kentucky. And then in February, we had a low-path avian influenza high path in February that tested positive in 2 Kentucky counties. And so then all of our staff, including USDA personnel, had to be deployed out west. Then we had the floods, again, animal welfare issue. And then just recently, another 2 cases of high path in Kentucky, which resulted in us having to knock on over 1,000 doors to ask questions to people, which is required by federal law. This is all to say that we're trying our best, but we need a little extra help. And at this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to our state veterinarian, Dr. Katie Flynn, who is the first female state veterinarian in Kentucky history. Dr. Flynn.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a discussion that furthers what we talked about in July. Today, I'd like to give you a brief overview of the impacts of the veterinary shortage, not just here in the Office of State Vet, but across the state. As you may know, the mission of the Office of State Veterinarian is to protect the animal agriculture across Kentucky, whether that's the 289 million broilers, 5 million layers, over 1 million cattle. We are preventing them from having foreign animal disease incursions. We play a critical role, as well as the private practitioners in the state of Kentucky, for keeping out foot and mouth disease, African swine fever, and high-path avian influenza, whether that comes in legally or illegally through the importation of animals, birds, on planes, trains, and automobiles is what we say. It can come in any way. And what are the consequences of those foreign animal diseases? Increased animal morbidity, mortality, economic impact, those local farmers that are put out of business, the farming and ranching communities. Those are social impacts as well as economic impacts. I just would like to take a little bit to give you an overview of that foreign animal disease, or I call it a Friday afternoon disease, because it literally does happen on a Friday afternoon. 4:50 on February 11th happens to be a Friday, and I get a phone call from a practitioner saying, "Doc, you're not going to like this." Well, don't ever start with that conversation. So we had an increased mortality, and we had a decreased water consumption, two critical signs for high-path avian influenza. Samples were taken and sent to the Breathitt laboratory, and they amazingly turned those samples around and said, "I will get you those results by midnight." 11:58, I got a text message and then a phone call. We had a presumptive positive. Those samples had to go to NVSL, the National Veterinary Service Laboratory in Ames, Iowa. They were hand-driven so that we could get confirmation immediately and start our response efforts of depopulation. Unfortunately, as we were dealing with that case, we then got a second case and a second phone call from the turkey manager in Webster County, who said, "I also have decreased water consumption and increased mortality." So again, those samples went to the laboratory, and on Sunday, those were confirmed. So that was February 11th, February 12th confirmation. Next slide. So just as a reminder, why is it so important to us? We are the 7th in the broilers in the United States. We are critical in feeding not just Kentucky, but across the country. So just to give you a brief insight into what happened in 2022, that Fulton County premises had a population of over 231,000 birds that had to be depopulated. We went to 940 doors to find 57 backyard premises. 37 of those were in Tennessee because we did have a control zone that split states. We had 6 commercial premises that had to be under quarantine, surveillance testing every 5 to 7 days, and getting quarantined and permitted movements. Then we had our Webster County of 53,000 birds that had to be depopulated, and we knocked on 1,163 doors. 31 backyards were quarantined, 13 commercial premises impacted. Anything in and out of that zone had to be permitted, which means we had 337 permitted movements that I had to sign off on each and every one of those for feed movements or eggs to hatcheries or eggs to farms or birds to slaughter. So just to give you an idea of how the impact of this industry, they had from February 12th to May 15th, they were under impact because we did not get our freedom back from AI until May. So they had export blockades from multiple countries. And just to give you some insights of our staffing issues, first week, this is immediately Friday afternoon, I started making phone calls. By Saturday, 22 of my 31 or so staff were assigned to go down. They put in 822 hours, 148 overtime hours. The concern we have is balancing people that are clean and dirty. And what I mean by that is if they go on a positive premises, they cannot go on to another premises. So balancing a team to know we need enough clean people to answer sick bird calls to make sure we could do surveillance. So balancing that personnel became critical. While we were doing that, 100% of our poultry inspections didn't get done. 73% of our CWD inspections did not get done. 67% of our rendering inspections did not get done. And 35% of our stockyard sales were not covered. So I just want to take your time here for one moment to think about what if, on top of what I just told you happened, if we had African swine fever. We are 17th in pork production, and we have 1,800 family swine farms out there. We have about 800,000 swine produced annually in Kentucky. We are supporting 8,882 jobs just in the pork industry alone. So we have to think about what are those potential impacts. And we also have to think about, we have a slaughter plant in Louisville that takes in from multiple states, but the majority comes from Kentucky and Tennessee. We have a growing industry that we need to protect. Next slide. We have to think about how easy this can come in, how easy African swine fever can come in and spread. We can have somebody that accidentally brings in a ham sandwich from an affected country, and that ham sandwich could get fed to a potbelly pig, and we could start an outbreak that easily. Next slide. So we have to also think about, where is this coming from and what are our risks? We have a 180% increase in our risks since 2018 just by luggage, just from coming in from countries like China, Hong Kong, Russia, Poland, all of which have African swine fever. So we have that risk, and the Beagle Brigade is not able to catch every single imported good. We also have to think about, once it gets in here, what state is it coming to and what's our risk? Go ahead and the next, click it, yeah. So we have to remember, we have an exposition center that has brought in 2021, swine from 38 states, whether that's the Swine Spectacular in July, the State Fair, and North American International Livestock Expo. That's 38 states that could be a source or spread of disease. Then we also have to think about our feral swine population. In 1982, it was limited. As you go across to 2019, we're seeing an expansion of feral swine. And if you ask Germany, that's how they have seen their spread of African swine fever, is in their feral swine population, which is hard to control. And we do have that risk here in Kentucky. So what are our potential impacts of African swine fever incursion to us? Well, what about our export market? A large percentage of our pork is exported. What are we going to do with 6.4 billion pounds of pork if our markets close? What does that do to our markets here? That's an economic impact, not in just revenue loss, export loss, but think of those family farmers that we have here. And you have to understand that USDA's first protocol is to stop all movement in 72 hours. So that 72 hours is to see where that disease is and to take control measures. I need to know if I can reopen the borders and allow our pigs to move in 72 hours. I don't have practitioners or enough staff to find out what's going on with all the swine out there. So do we have an adequately trained staff? And do we have enough folks in the Office of State Vet? So let's take a look. Go ahead, next slide. So let's take a look at our large animal veterinarians. Where are they and why are they leaving large animal practice? One thing you have to look at is a salary. When you look at the small animal salaries, they get paid a higher salary. If you look at rural practitioners or large animal practitioners, they're on call schedule and longer hours just to make the money that they can. We also have to think of the dangers on the job. Over 30 years working life in equine practice, you can expect to sustain 7 to 8 injuries that are going to keep you out of work. That's loss of work because of injuries, because of the dangers on a job. We also have to think about how emotionally draining and compassion fatigue when we think about having to depopulate animals. And then you also have to think about unrealistic client expectations, like my father who wants the horse to be injected on a Sunday afternoon just so it can race next week. So we have to think about all of those. Those are the challenges we have for large animal practice. And then we have to also look at, more specifically, the debt and salary. If you look at other occupations, you have the dentist, the optometrist, the pharmacologist, the pharmacist, all making more than a veterinarian. I'm pretty sure those animal bites and those kicks are a lot worse than a dentist bite. We also have to think about those salaries, and we go back to that small animal salary. Is somebody coming out of school going to go for a salary of $96,000 for small animal practice, or are they going to go for $58,000 in equine or large animal practice? When you consider their debt load, their mean debt load is $157,000 according to the AVMA. Next slide. So one thing we're doing is looking at the USDA veterinary loan repayment program. And when we at the Office of State Veterinarian put those nominations forward for those shortage areas, we have put forward 20 areas in the last 5 years. And we've got 9 practitioners out there that are reaping the benefits, but that's not enough. That is not solving our problem.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Katie, and good morning. Coming through. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take a few minutes and kind of go through with you the proposal that we bring to you this morning that the commissioner mentioned about what we're asking of the General Assembly in the session for 2023. But first of all, let me tell you what we have done ourselves within the authority and within the current budget that we have at the Department of Agriculture and operating under. In recent months, we have created and funded 4 new full-time positions. As you see on the screen, the Executive Staff Advisor, which will serve as our emergency coordinator in the Office of State Veterinarian and for all of the department's operations when it comes to emergency. This person has been hired and started November 1st. We're using one of our special assistant positions to serve as a 4th veterinarian. This will be a field position, the first field position that we've had in a state veterinarian in many, many years. We have interviewed 3 candidates. We've made 1 offer that was declined, and I will say that was because of salary. We are in the process of Agriculture Regulatory Specialist 1 to boost up our field staff. This position has just recently posted and will be based in Area 4. We have 4 areas that we work out of from the Office of State Veterinarian. We've also moving forward with the employment of a branch manager to serve over the 4 investigative officers that we have at the Department of Agriculture. This will increase that staff to a total of 5. I've been told this morning that this position has just been approved by the Personnel Cabinet, so we will be posting and moving forward with filling that. Remind you that all 4 of these positions, salaries, benefits, everything, are being consumed by the department, are being taken care of by the Department of Agriculture within our current budget by moving around various priorities from other parts of KDA, not within the Office of State Veterinarian. We've also been lucky enough through a USDA Cooperative Agreement grant to bring on a temporary part-time veterinarian who is going to be starting next Monday, working under as a part-time contractor through one of the employment agencies to be working to develop our food safety and emergency preparedness plans that we are so far behind on. This leads us to our request to the General Assembly. To summarize, we are asking that a new division be created within the Office of State Veterinarian titled Division of Emergency Preparedness and Response. And while we're at it, while we're in the statute, we also ask that we rename the current divisions, as you see there on the screen, to better fit the role that those divisions and those staff members play. The purpose of this is to address the top 3 deficiencies identified over the past year as we've dealt with disasters, disease outbreaks, and all of the other impacts that the Office of State Vet has had. That's emergency programs, policy and regulations, outreach, and education. If this new division is created, you'll see it on the right of the chart there. We are basically asking for 9 new positions in addition to the 4 that I mentioned a while ago in this division to get it stood up and to get it started. Division director, an assistant director, program coordinator that focuses on emergency programs, and a program coordinator that focuses on outreach and education, and then 4 agricultural regulatory specialists, 1 for each of the 4 areas that I mentioned a while ago, and administrative assistant to position. These positions that I just mentioned, if you bring the employee in at the beginning salary, as the Personnel Cabinet has established, will be a cost of about $722,000. So in addition to legislation to modify the structure of the Kentucky Department of Agriculture and the Office of State Veterinarian, we would be asking if the opportunity is there, if the budget is opened up, to fund these positions so that we may begin to build this division starting July 1st under the new budget during Commissioner Quarles' term, if at all possible. Commissioner Quarles mentioned the Auburn trip. He's mentioned the vet dialogue that we're going to be holding again on November the 14th at 10 o'clock during the North American. We certainly invite you there. I think the Department of Agriculture, led by Commissioner Quarles, has stepped forward over the last several months to address many of the issues that we've talked about here today and what we need to do to beef up, quote, the Department of Agriculture's Office of State Veterinarian to handle the growing impact that we see in Kentucky. And I want to close with just 3 examples. We talk about disasters and we talk about other things, but I think these 3 things will will help you explain what we're doing. Over the last 5 years, the workload within the Office of State Veterinarian has increased. In deer or cervic herds, the number has gone from 65 in 2017 to 122 today with no new staff and CWD and permitting all those movements. Our National Poultry Improvement Plan, flocks, have gone from 95 in 2017 to 150 in 2021. The big change is in the CVIs and the import of CVIs for those livestock shows, other things where you're bringing animals in or out of Kentucky. In 2017, we produced almost 9,000 certificates with over 87,000 animals. In 2021, that 9,000 became 23,684 and 159,000 animals. That's just a quick example of the increase, the tremendous increase that we've seen in the workload in the Office of State Veterinarian without additional staff and without additional resources to manage those loads. So, Mr. Chairman, I will stop there, and we'll all be glad to answer any questions, those comments.
Sorry about that.
No, I can
Look
hear
at the
you now.
number of animals we bring in for shows and various things. I mean, we've done a good job here in the state of attracting some of the high-class shows that moves a lot of animals into the state. We've just made an investment in the Kentucky State Fairgrounds of about an additional $250 million for our largest ag facility in the state to increase that even more. So this is an issue that's going to continue to worsen if we don't do something about it. It's a public safety issue. It's not just an ag issue. It's a public safety issue. So, Dr. Flynn, I know that you all work long hours. You work 24 hours a day a lot of times. We have these emergencies, and most of the time that goes unseen. So I hope the members remember that this year, that they do put extra funding into the state vet's office because it's critical to all of our citizens of the Commonwealth. So thank you all very much, and thank you especially, Dr. Flynn. Thank you. Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. My question is directed to Dr. Flynn. I've been here 7 years in the Senate and didn't think I would ever have to ask a question like this, but here goes. You mentioned all the countries where these issues were coming from, dealing with Asian flu and that sort of thing. Has there been any discussion with the USDA on biological warfare, and are we prepared for that as a state? I guess the main question, is that a topic of conversation?
Yes, that has been a topic of conversation for USDA. We also have our folks, the investigators that we spoke of earlier. One of them is involved in the Fusion Center, which is under the FBI. So we do maintain our connection with that. There are obviously documented situations where there have been threats to agriculture and how easy it could be introducing. Just for example, foot and mouth disease can be on a rag, and you throw it into a bunch of cows sniff it, then they eat it. But as they sniff it, they're spreading that. So it's very easily to introduce.
And I know the commissioner, I think, had a post on this a couple years ago or something about some things floating through the mail and things like that. So, but you answer my question. You're working on it, and it's on your all's radar and USDA's radar, right?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A constituent just asked me to ask if states can share an emergency response team. So we appreciate the public paying attention, and that's the public's question. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. There are mechanisms to do that. Right now, we have actually been very fortunate that Tennessee does share staff with us on a routine basis, and we share it with them. So that's just a mutual agreement between us two states, and we voluntarily share that. In the case of High Path, we did a joint incident management team. So we did share resources at that time. Recently, they just had an exercise in Tennessee for African swine fever. They were short 2 inspectors, and we sent 2 of ours down. So we do share.
Very good. Thank you all so much, and we certainly appreciate your dedication to our animals and humans here in Kentucky. It's very important to every living being here in Kentucky. So we thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I could real quickly also add, we saved some time in not mentioning this, but we also, once this division is set up, we'll be looking at creating a state agricultural response team. 16 states have a similar team, most of them in the Southeast, that would be bringing in additional resources such as the commodity organizations, farm bureaus, and others at a time of a disaster like the floods or the tornadoes. And so to be able to organize and bring that forward, we would also be using this staff eventually to put that together over time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Corcani.
Thank you. Thank you all for presenting. I have a quick question for Dr. Flynn. Can you talk about the number of graduates of veterinary studies versus how many are, I guess they're going into large animal care, but are there enough graduates, or where's the sort of gap?
So I think it's multifaceted. So I can tell you there's about 7,000 applicants for 3,000 seats every year for all of the veterinary schools that are accredited by the American Veterinary Medical Association. And of those, there's a small percentage that go into large animal. I can't speak to all of the veterinary schools, but I can say that Auburn has been looking at that, and they have a preceptorship program where they're trying to put veterinary students in their final year with practitioners in rural Kentucky, and they've done that for 3 years. And of the 20 students that they put in those rural practices, 95%, all but one, have gone back into rural practice when they graduated. So there is some progress in trying to figure out how to get those students back into, or future veterinarians into rural communities. But I don't have all the exact numbers that I can remember right now.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Commissioner, for being here today. Appreciate the good work you've done over the last 7 years in the Commissioner's office, and to all your staff. You've got a great team there.
Thank you, and just want to invite you out to the North American as well. Look forward to seeing you all at conference season, and we'll be getting the reorg bill together for your review. And the last thing I've got is these investigators, if you watch Yellowstone, they're the equivalent of livestock agents. So there's a lot of fun you can have as well. And Chairman Hornback, thank you for your leadership in agriculture. If my calculus is correct, this is the last time perhaps I'll be before you as chairman. Just want to say thank you for your tenure as Senate Ag Chairman over the past several years. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Our next presenter today is from the Kentucky Dairy Development Council, H. Barlow. Glad to have you here today, H. If you would introduce yourself for the record, you may proceed. Just keep it short.
Thank you, Senator. I've been trying to learn how to shorten these PowerPoints, but so I'm going to roll through today.
Yeah, well,
I would like the Commissioner or Dr. Flynn, neither one asked me to say this, but I'm going to piggyback on that large animal vet situation for just a second before I start. My veterinarian of 27 years passed away about 2 weeks ago. He was a dear friend, and he had a huge practice. And I've been, I have a dairy farm as well as being in the KDDC. We milk about 120 cows in Barron County, and I've been working for a full month trying to find a vet to come and do a herd check, and they're just not available. I mean, I finally found one that said, you know, and he's 3 weeks away, even today. And we think there's going to be a replacement come into that clinic in Hart County, but it is a severe issue, the large animal practitioners, so please help them out if you can. I am H.H. Barlow. Been in the dairy industry my entire life, and been an executive director for the last 3 years at the Kentucky Dairy Development Council. Just want to go through pretty quick today some of what's happened in the past and a little bit of excitement about the future. So you can read the agenda. KDDC was formed in 2005 out of the Agricultural Development Board, gave us the funding to form the statewide dairy organization. All 400 farms in Kentucky are members of it, all 400 dairies. We didn't really have a dairy organization before that was active, so we're very thankful to the Ag Development Board for that. Our three main goals are improve farmer profitability, improve the quality of milk produced, and engage our farmers in becoming better producers and more successful. Just look at the quick numbers here for a minute. I guess we lost maybe one digit there. 10 years ago, in 2011, we had 900 dairy farms in Kentucky. That's dropped at the end of 21, 420. 76,000 cows down to 46,000 cows. 1 billion pounds of production down to like 907. But the good positive about this is we did raise our production per cow by over 5,000 pounds per cow, and we led the nation for the last 5 years, or over that 5-year average, as being the number one increase in production in the dairy industry. Just some key takeaways. What can we do to change this, I guess you would call it decrease in numbers of dairy production in the state? I've often heard, I know most of you know Wayne Hunt down in the western part of the state, said we've accomplished becoming and improving our grain situation, but we are basically a livestock state, so I think we need to revitalize our dairy industry to try to take advantage of our forage and feed production that we have in this state. There are two ways I believe we can improve the amount of dairy farms and dairy production in the state. That's to grow our existing dairy farms, and secondly, to recruit new dairies into Kentucky. We can grow our existing dairy farms. We have a lot of young people, actually, sons and daughters that are coming back with their, into their home operations. Some of them are rather large. We have over 3 dairies in the state already that are over 1,000 cows, and each one of those farms have young people involved in their operations. Worldwide production is down. U.S. exports are up. Things have really changed in the dairy industry in the past year. We had, from 2015 basically to 2020, there was no demand for any increased production. That changed dramatically because of things like I know you know of what's happening in Europe with environmental issues. New Zealand is not growing anymore in dairy. They're locked out, or they are maxed out. So there's a lot of opportunity for dairy production in the United States, and I believe Kentucky is well versed to take some of that role as we go forward. We can grow cow numbers. We can improve production per cow. We can improve our facilities. We've got to improve our genetics, and we always can improve our nutrition and management. I'm not going to go through these today, but we have a lot of programs within our organization that try to help our dairy farms that are existing here in the state today. Two of the things that are kind of new and not brand new, but we are part of a value-added program, a dairy value-added program. We're partnering with the University of Tennessee and North Carolina State on a 3-year, $6 million grant program. We actually had 7 dairy operations in the state bring in over $500,000 to add new equipment and new things to improve their value-added product. That is processing their own milk on their farm. Beef on dairy is a national trend to breed the animals in your herd that are not the most productive to beef cattle, to beef sires, so you create a crossbred calf that's much more valuable than a purebred Holstein or a purebred Jersey steer. So those are some things that are brand new that have kind of, not brand new, but are gaining steam as we go down the road. I have a goal. I'm not probably going to be around too many more years. I've got a little bit of gray hair, and I've been, you can tell that I'm not as young as some of the folks, I guess, but I believe Kentucky is well positioned to become the main Southeast dairy state. And I want to show you some reasons why I believe that. We've got the fastest growing consumer base in the world in the Southeast. We got 5 states that have basically given up on dairy totally. They have less than 50 herds in their states. 2 more states under 140. So we rank 3rd in the Southeast. Georgia has very large herds. They're really not looking for expansion. And obviously, Florida is pretty much, they are almost of anything decreasing because of environmental issues, particularly around the Lake Okeechobee region. That leaves Kentucky as, I think, an opportunity. We have 7 processing plants in Kentucky. That's much more than most of the states in the Southeast. And only 50% of that milk is produced in Kentucky that's going into our processing plants. There's a new era in dairy. This is Dr. Jenks Britt. You can read that, but he is a native of Kentucky. He was the dean of College of Agriculture in Tennessee, taught at North Carolina State for years. He was commissioned to do a study of where is dairy going to be 50 years from now. And he basically put together a program that shows that dairy is going to have to move from the dry areas back to the east and the north. It was announced in July that 46% of the dairy cows in the United States are in significant dry areas. So, there are other problems that California is the largest dairy state in the nation by a large majority. Wisconsin's large too, but California overtook them about 20 years ago. Tremendous amount of urban pressure in California, environmental regulations. And kind of the big elephant in the room that's changed in the last year is transportation cost. I ship milk to a plant in London, Kentucky, out of my farm. It's 100 miles. About half of that milk that goes into that plant, it's the largest plant in Kentucky. They process between 30 and 40 semi-loads of milk per day. It's a big operation. And the last few years, when they need a load of milk, they'd call up a co-op and say, send me one of those Michigan loads down, or send me a load from Wisconsin, or Texas, or Oklahoma. All of a sudden, that's changed. $5.50 diesel fuel, driver problems. They are looking for milk locally if they can get it. So that gives us another opportunity, I think, to why we need to really look at what's going on. Why does Kentucky, what makes them poised to be attract development? And obviously, a dairy farm uses a tremendous amount of water. Water is the most important thing, a dairy-friendly environment. We got a good climate for cows. A huge item is cheap energy, and we can make feed with the best of them. And I think our distillery industry provides us with, byproduct feed that's really important to feed our cows. There's a lot of things positive for us to go. I'm not going into detail on this slide, but the thing, if you can remember, every dairy cow that is milking produces between $5,000 and $6,000 of sales per year. That's a big number. You can do the multiplier, whether it's 1,000 cows or whatever. A dairy farm has a tremendous economic engine impact in rural Kentucky. I heard rural Kentucky mentioned earlier today. I went to the University of Kentucky from 68 to 72, drove up from Glasgow area, up 31E, up through Bardstown, Hodgenville. Every farm had a dairy. Every farm had a tobacco base. Every farm had a little corn plant. Senator Hornback, you know what I think I'm talking about. Today, those farms are pretty much all gone grain, or they're just kind of gone into CRP. And they're, so what happened, though, I think it's really important, is a lot of the economic engine that we had from those rural communities are gone, because dairy cows and beef cattle produce a tremendous amount of things that people don't think about. The tax base, all of the things, inspectors, you can read it as well as I can. If we get some large dairies into the state, there's a lot of satellite industries that go along with it. Feed production, waste utilization. Methane digesters have already started approaching us, the dairies that we have today. Every dairy farm creates a lot of animals that are made for beef, and so those are feeding those animals off the farm. A lot of the contract feeding goes on. So I'm a big believer that a rising tide lifts all boats. So I think if we can really energize our dairy industry by bringing in some new dairies and growing our dairy industry, we can really help all of Kentucky's dairy industry. So along with that, I want to, I guess, come in today to report to you that I've been involved in for a whole year. We were contacted back in October of 21 by a large California dairy. They spent a year investigating us, and I've spent a lot of time investigating them. And I'm happy to announce today that we have a 5,000 to 6,000 cow dairy from California that's going to put up a new dairy in Fulton County, Kentucky. That's a $50 million investment just to put the dairy in. That's what that brings in. That's not including the cows or the farm equipment that goes with it. It will bring in, usually it's about 10 to 12 people per 1,000 cows as far as the labor force. But that's really not the impact from a dairy. It's, as you notice on this slide, this dairy will produce 8 to 10 semi-loads of milk a day. That's 8 to 10 truck driver jobs. It's all the other things that we do, the welders that got to come and take care of the equipment, all the things. So it's a tremendous economic engine. I want to thank the Ag Development Board for being behind us. I want to thank the State Economic Development Cabinet have given them a $2.5 million economic development grant. The Ag Development Board has approved a $2.5 million participation loan. And so we're excited. I talked to the parties last night that will own the dairy, and they said today they are meeting with building contractors, and so it's a finished, done deal. And I'm just really excited about what this gives us an opportunity. And we have found in discussing with them, if you bring one in, there are probably others coming. It's a tight knit. Large dairies are kind of a tight knit fraternity, and I've already been contacted about 2 more dairies. So I think, we can't bring in maybe 20, but if we talked about earlier, if we've got 45 to 50,000 cows today, if we could double that, what would that do for our industry? What would that do for the Southeast? So I'm excited to report that today. And, I think we've got a bright future. It's going to take a lot of, continued commitment, a lot of hard work, and got to promote our industry. But I'd like to see us produce the milk in Kentucky instead of it coming into our plants from Pennsylvania and Michigan and Texas and Oklahoma. With that, I'll take any questions, and I appreciate your time and the opportunity to be here with you.
Any questions for Mr. Barlow? If not, Representative Carney.
I'm sorry, Chairman, I'll be brief.
That's okay.
Thank you for presenting. I had a question about, and you may not know this, the average number of employees on a dairy farm, I guess from small, medium, large. The one that you mentioned from California, I'm assuming, is a larger operation.
Right. It's probably pretty much 10 to 12 employees per 1,000 cows. And even like I've got almost a 200 cow dairy farm, and I've got 2.5 employees. So that's kind of, I think that's a fair question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I asked this last time you were here, kind of in a different form, but maybe the last time you were here, we may have had like 500 dairies maybe in the state, and I think it's
still going down.
Still going down, right? I know it's at one point there were certain counties where we had 500 dairies in that county. And you've mentioned earlier, you're the one that said it. You've been around for a long time. You've seen a lot, right?
Yes, sir.
So is it your opinion that the federal subsidies have failed the family dairy farmer in Kentucky as far as keeping them in business and keeping things going? I mean, that to me, that was the intent of these subsidies, is to keep the family farm operational, keep our dairy farms in business. And clearly in Kentucky, it's been just a straight downward trend. So what's your opinion on that?
We really haven't been involved in any federal subsidies on a regular basis and anything. We've had other programs, but just in 2018, we got the Dairy Margin Coverage Insurance Program passed. It's the first time we've really ever had a program that was available to cover our losses, I guess you would say. I was asked this question earlier about, can you tell me one thing that would help all dairy farms? and I answered that question. We're unique, I think, in that there's no silver bullet that we can push a button, because every dairy farm is individual in their credit structure, their their land base, all of these things. It's just there's no silver bullet, but I think we used to be, when we had all of those farms, so many farms in across the state and things. There were, scale is a huge thing in dairy farming. I'll give you one other example. Maybe this can help you explain. I use a tool called a mixer wagon, and that wagon has scales on it, and to replace that today would cost $50,000. I feed approximately 200 head out of that wagon. That same wagon would do 1,000 head. So you can see the economy of scale, how that works. And so that's a huge thing. Economy of scale is such a positive, but it depends. What are your goals? I guess I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer than that, maybe, but I don't know what else I can tell you.
Yeah, you're basically saying it's complicated.
It's extremely complicated.
So clearly in the 50s, there were too many dairies because we had the baby boom, and all that milk was going to, that population at that time. So there was a natural decline that was going to occur. And I know the federal subsidy thing and the federal program thing has a weird history of how it's all flowed through, but it's
they tried some buyout programs.
Right.
That was a federal program back in the 80s that I remember obviously very well, and it solved a problem for maybe a year or two.
Right.
But dairy farmers are just like all farmers in the United States. We're really good at what we do, and
Right.
we increase production. Just like 100 bushel corn, now we're 200 plus, and so those are factors, I think. But there are ways to make it. The management rises to the top. I think that's really the one of the key issues. And I feel like if the type of dairies that we're trying to recruit to come into the state are outstanding, and they will, I think they'll help everybody become a better dairy.
Yeah, and like you were talking earlier, sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is my last comment, but the problem is not production, it's the market, right? Where are you going to send that milk, and do you have a good market for that milk? And so I think that's where we really need to focus a lot of extra attention also is.
Well, I'm very
protecting
encouraged.
those
I'm very
markets.
encouraged about the market compared to what we've had in the last few years. Of course, that could turn around fast, but
Yeah.
I don't really think it will. The problems worldwide. Protein is the answer, guys. That's what to solve. This. And milk powder is full of protein, and so exports are going to become more and more of an important part of our industry. And I think we're headed down the right path. And honestly, consumption is higher this year than it's ever been. 666 pounds of milk equivalent goes into every consumer in the United States. So we're really excited about demand. Butter's now good for you.
Thank you, H.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update on that. And one thing we've done a lot to increase the when you talk about some of the advantages we have here in Kentucky, we've done a lot to increase the amount of bourbon that's produced here in Kentucky. There's a lot of byproducts from that are perfect feed for those dairy animals and beef animals too. So that's another advantage we have.
Yes, sir.
So-
And I want to echo what the other speakers say. Thank you for all your help through the last several years. I've been working with you, Senator Hornback. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you. Our next presenter today is Community Farm Alliance, and Martin, I think you've got some guests here. Where's Martin? Martin, I think you got some guests here with you. We've got about 15 or 20 minutes left, so like the others, I'd encourage you not to dwell too long.
I'll talk fast.
Okay, thank you. Glad to have you here today. Introduce yourself for the record, and then you all may proceed.
My name's Martin Richards. I'm the Executive Director of Community Farm Alliance, and today I have two fellow staff with me. Kimmy Ishmael, who is our policy coordinator. Many of you know met her. And Jennifer Weber, who is our North Fork local food coordinator, who works out of Perry County. And today we'd like to talk about a little update about what we have been doing in collaboration with others on flood relief and recovery work, and then a little bit about this upcoming legislative session. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, and good morning. Next slide. Yeah. To begin with, I want to paint a picture of what things look like on July 27th. Over the last 10 years or so, federal, state, local, and private investments have been made in eastern Kentucky, which have helped to grow and strengthen our local food system and, in turn, our local economy. CFA alone has invested over $3 million. According to an analysis of ag census data by the Kentucky Center for Agriculture and Rural Development, between 2007 and 2017, eastern Kentucky was one of the few places in the state where the number of farms and producers and sales, direct-to-consumer sales, all increased. CFA's investments in particular have strengthened local farmers markets. Gross sales and the number of participating farmers at these markets have increased. And thanks in large part to the Kentucky Double Dollars program, more people in our communities are able to purchase fresh local food. Since its inception in 2014, this program has taken root, and communities in more than 25 eastern Kentucky counties have benefited. Investments in season extension production, such as high tunnels, have enabled farmers to produce year-round, creating a more consistent income stream for farmers and better access to healthy food for communities. Investments in value-added production have enabled farmers to generate additional forms of income from their farms. They have also created the opportunity to develop new products, such as meal kits, which make it easier for consumers to access local food and creates another market channel for farmers. Next slide. Oh, actually, that was that slide.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's all the value added. That's all the fabulous stuff that's been going on over the last 10 years. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. So, and as we now know all too well, the extraordinarily high and massive force of floodwaters wrought devastation across eastern Kentucky on July 28th. The farmers markets in Breathitt, Knott, Letcher, and Perry counties all saw floodwaters in their market locations. Produce ready to be harvested and row crops nearing maturation were covered in floodwater, mud, and debris. Barns and sheds filled with several generations' worth of tools were swept away, tractors and other equipment were submerged, livestock was lost. Farmers lost the hay they had already put up for the winter, plus their fall cutting. Gardens on which families, extended families, and sometimes entire communities depend for their winter food source were wiped out. Many also lost produce that they had already put back for the winter. This part of eastern Kentucky's food economy, though informal, is both the source of nutrition security for many and an important cultural touchstone. Much of what we know about the damages to farms comes from the Central Appalachian Family Farm Fund, which was created by the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky several years ago in partnership with CFA to support small-scale farms and the local food system in eastern Kentucky. To date, 140 farms across 12 flood-impacted counties have applied for flood relief through this fund. Together, they have reported just over $3.2 million in damages to their farm operations, and they estimate that they have lost nearly $1.3 million in anticipated income. Additionally, the forward movement of the local food system has paused as damaged infrastructure is repaired, and the attention of food system practitioners is focused on flood response and recovery. Next slide. So when I think about the response to flooding, the first thing that comes to my mind is human capital. The investment in and growth of eastern Kentucky's local food system has produced strong and effective relationships among organizations and people. This has enabled us to respond quickly and effectively to this disaster. The day after the flood, CFA and the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky were in discussion about how the Central Appalachian Family Farm Fund could be used as a tool to help farms recover from this disaster. Not long after, several organizations working in eastern Kentucky on agricultural issues began meeting on a regular basis. Out of these conversations came an online food and ag recovery resource guide, and then collaboration on other projects, including The Kentucky Hort Council's Equipment Repair and Refurbishment Initiative, which will enable farmers to access free engine repairs, small engine repairs, to get them ready for the 2023 growing season, while also creating training opportunities for students. Soil testing through Grow Appalachia and water testing through the Kentucky Hort Council, which will help farmers better understand what they need to do to prepare their soil and the rest of their farms for the next growing season, while assuring customers about the safety of their food. And then the East Kentucky Canning Coalition's efforts to connect home gardeners with bulk produce to put back for the winter, providing both a source of nutrition, security, and a sense of normalcy. And this work is going to continue. We are going to help farmers and others in the local food system recover and grow. And now I'm going to turn it over to Martin.
Thank you. And I think we're all looking forward to the next Eastern Kentucky Farmers Conference in March, which I think this discussion will continue. So a little bit of reminder, I think you all know, largely thanks to the Commissioner's education efforts about the situation with hunger and nutrition in Kentucky, but I'm just going to briefly go over it. Yeah, we've got an issue with hunger in Kentucky. I mean, for all of us in this room, we consider Kentucky an ag state. So that we've got hungry Kentuckians, is a bit mind-blowing for an ag state. And what can we do about it? These figures are from Feeding Kentucky, just to put numbers in a cute face to the issue. Next one. So, it's not just about hunger. It is the consequences have caught up with folks. We have done very well in this country in American agriculture in producing calories cheaply. But it has come at a bit of a cost. And now we're kind of facing those consequences with nutrition-related health issues in this country. And they're kind of all over the place. And the one that jumped out to me this year was I was on a panel that was hosted by a military support organization. And I did not know it, but it makes perfect sense that one of the big issues for the military is their inability to recruit healthy, capable folks into the military. They're finding obesity and diabetes is a big factor that eliminates folks. So now this has become a national security issue. It kind of makes sense, but I had never connected those dots before. Okay. So, Kentucky is like, we're either at the bottom of the list in terms of health or top of the list in terms of the issues that we have faced. And these are just some of those ones. The fact that Kentucky's kids are number one in obesity, percentage of obesity is, frankly, it's unacceptable. Next, please. So this is what it means, right? 48th in heart disease, 44th in diabetes, 45th in obesity, 43rd in diet-related health outcomes. Again, this is unacceptable, and we can do stuff about it. So if you haven't heard already, this is the latest buzzword, food is medicine. I mean, I think it's a shift in a way a lot of people look to food. Food in terms of being preventative, but also, changing diets in terms of helping to address these food-related issues. So, and this work kind of falls into these three big buckets. I think most of us are very much aware of food assistance in terms of food pantries and charity and stuff like that. But these other two, medically tailored meals and incentive for produce, are the other kind of legs of this three-legged stool. I'm happy that we have a Fresh RX for Moms program to help get better nutrition to expectant mothers. And then, as Jennifer said, Kentucky Double Dollars, again, provides access, affordable access for folks who are using federal nutrition benefits to increase that. So, again, and this is hugely important, right? I mean, this is really good economic development for investing in improving folks' health. I mean, this is also news to me, but it also makes sense that we can save money by having a healthier workforce. Right now we're having problems filling the workforce, right? And if we can make folks healthier, then we're doing really good on that. And it's also a really good investment in public dollars. I mean, the Ag Development Fund has supported Kentucky Double Dollars for the last, how many years is it now, Brian? 14. No, it's not that long. Since 14. So we have the data, right? And the data says that we get over $8 to every return on every dollar of Ag Development Fund that's been invested in this program. And we count on UK's Community Economic Development Initiative of Kentucky to do that analysis for us. So I'm trying to cover ground here, Chair. So I'm going to turn it over now to Kimmy, what can we do about this?
We just got a few minutes left.
I can make it work. So what can we do? This is a big question. And our answer is the Healthy Farm and Food Innovation Fund. So what is this? It's a basic structure. We want to create a structure that is a fund that will be capable of receiving state, federal, and private philanthropy funds to help Kentucky address food and nutritional security. So our number one priority would be to use this to match funds for federal grant programs. And also this applicants to this program or to this fund are to specifically use locally grown foods from Kentucky. Meat from Kentucky, eggs from Kentucky, all produce has to be Kentucky grown. This also would help, farmers, local producers, seniors, and people who use benefits. And what kind of programs would apply? Like we mentioned before, programs like Kentucky Double Dollars that really impact our economy, help access in rural communities to more farmers markets, more nutritional foods, and more local foods especially. And our Fresh RX for Moms program that is up there as well. And the impact, of course, we've talked about the economic impact, how it would help farmers by expanding their businesses and expanding grocery budgets for people and families and communities who need more groceries. And I'll just end out by saying this. I'm going to read this quote from Michelle Howell. She is a farmer in Western Kentucky, Need More Acres Farms. And she says, I've seen many good ideas come to fruition with the support of specialty crop, farmers market promotion programs, local food promotion, and Finney grants. Programs like the Kentucky Double Dollars program, Food Chains Growth, neighborhood CSAs, and pharmacy programs started as ideas shared between farmers and consumers, but were leveraged by the support of these grants. These programs become bridge builders to other areas of our policy and politics as well. And I think she explains it perfectly that it is a bridge between farmers and consumers, and how can we make our communities healthier while also helping our farmers. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kimberly. Any questions? If not, thank you all for being here today, and thank you all for the work you do, especially in helping the folks down in East Kentucky with the floods and stuff they had. I know there was a lot of loss down there, and people don't think about East Kentucky and a lot of the agriculture they have, but believe me, there's a lot of agriculture down there, and it's a sustainable source of income for them and food for them and nutritional food, and we appreciate the work you all have done down that area of the state. So thank you very much, Martin.
You're welcome, and like the Commissioner said, thank you, Senator, for your service. And we're going to miss you in the next session.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Do you have a question, Senator Thayer?
Nope. I have a comment.
Thank you very much. We do have 3 different administrative regs that I need to mention. If you all could just look at those, I wanted to mention that so they can go into effect. So I think that's everything we got. Senator Thayer, I think you had a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As has been noted, this will be the last time that you will preside over this interim joint committee, unless you decide to make a comeback someday, which we can all hold out hope for. I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing when you called and told me you weren't going to run again, and I cried like a baby. So I'm going to try to avoid doing that again today, and just to tell you that you're going to be missed very much. And I hope you'll still call me regularly like you have for the last 8 years to tell me the way things ought to be.
I'll probably call you even more.
I will welcome that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your service to our Commonwealth.
I'd like to recognize Dennis Parrott and for the work he's done. Dennis, I've known you most all my life since high school when we participated in FFA and stuff together, and appreciate your dedication to agriculture and what you've done and serving on the committee here with me for the last, I think, 12 years. It's been an honor to serve with you that long, and wanted to see if you had any comments. Your mic.
You know, we're blessed in Kentucky with some. Can you hear me, Ryan? Okay. We're blessed in Kentucky with a lot of good ag leadership, and that's going to bode us well. And Kentucky is a wonderful state. You know, all states have issues, but Kentuckians stick together. And as we've seen, when all these disasters we've had, well, everybody comes together. But there's a lot of tremendous agriculturists in Kentucky, and I think we got a bright future.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yes, thank you.
Representative Graham.
Senator, I'm going to shout out to you because right now you represent my county, Franklin County. And
sorry I haven't been to see you.
Well, but I want to just say this to both you and Senator Parrott. The one thing about you is that you've always tried to be fair, both of you really, but I'm focused on you right now. Chairman of this committee, you've always given access to everyone who's on this committee because we all know how important agriculture is to Kentucky. And so I want to salute you on behalf of the other side of the aisle for the service that you have provided to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, to your district, our district now, and what you have done in terms of promoting agriculture, not only here in Kentucky, but promoting outside of Kentucky as well. And to Senator Parrott, I remember when you got here, it was a surprise victory, if you remember. And you have worked diligently, not only on behalf of your district, but also in looking out for agriculture as well as helping people all across this Commonwealth. And, you know, sometimes we need to put partisanship aside and recognize those who have a very interest in helping the people of the Commonwealth. And not only the people of the Commonwealth, but to lift everyone up to know that there are people who are fighting on behalf of all of the people of the Commonwealth, not just a few, and the two of you have done that. So I salute both of you for the service that you have provided, not only to your district, but to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Representative Graham. For me, since my last meeting, I just want to say what an honor it's been to serve the Commonwealth as on this committee. As chairman of Ag, of course, you all know that I'm committed to agriculture. I have been all my life. And like I tell my floor leader a lot of times, you know, a lot of different ones up here will think that the lawyers, the doctors, those others are necessities, the professions that we have, and they are somewhat. Some of them even think that politicians are a necessity, and I tend to question that. But when it comes down to it, we've all got to eat. And agriculture is the most important industry that we have, not just in the state, but in the nation, because we all have to eat first. And so I hope that in the future that you all respect that you realize that. And, you know, it's been such an honor to serve on the Ag Committee because, to me, this is the only committee, I think you see that today, that is not as political. It's a committee that tries to do right. When I run it for the last 10 years, I mean, I try to be open and listen to everybody's thoughts and opinions that are out there. Don't always agree, but did try to listen to everybody. And I hope that the Ag Committee stays like that in the future, that it doesn't get political, that we try to do the right things, and we listen to those because there's not many left up here that are involved in agriculture. that know what it's like to try to make a living off a farm. So I hope that you all listen to them, to all the other members that are here. I hope you all listen to them and what their needs are. Just like today, when most of the presenters today talked about the large animal vets. I mean, that's a necessity. It's got to be done. That's one of those things that has to be done. So anyway, thank you all very much for the honor of serving for you all for the last 12 years in the Senate and on the Ag Committee as chair for the last 10 years. It's been quite a pleasure. And to my staff, the best staff in the Capitol, I think the entire staff up here is great, but our staff is the best. So thank you all very much. Anybody else got anything they want to say?